Before you go for your US student visa interview, prepare to answer these questions because these are the questions the visa officer will likely ask you. Let's get into it. So you already know this is the most important step in this entire student, in the entire application process. You've put in a lot of work to get to this point. You've applied to schools, you've gotten admission offers, you've figured out funding, and now it's the visa. So let's talk about that today. Now, before we get to the specific questions you're likely going to get asked, I do have a couple of tips for you so that you know how to answer some of those questions. So let's start with a few tips from me to you because I got you, okay? So the first tip is keep your answers short, simple, direct. Do not provide explanations they've not asked for. So if the visa officer hasn't asked you for extra explanation, keep your responses very short and direct. Only answer questions that you've been asked. That is such an important thing to remember. Another tip is be confident and be friendly. Don't be too friendly like you need a favor and you're being extra friendly, but just be friendly like you would be to a normal person and be confident. Just believe and it will work out. So just have that confidence that you've put in a lot of work into this and you will get your visa. So have that confidence. Don't appear like timid, you're just trying to leave your home country kind of vibe, if you get what I'm saying. So be confident and friendly. Another tip, and this is the most important tip, no matter what question you're asked, always remember that your intent at the time of doing that application is that you will not remain in the US. Don't say anything about you remaining in the US, about you getting a job in the US. I will share a couple of questions or common questions that you likely get asked. I will share some of those and I'll tell you how or why this is important. But just remember that on that interview date, you are not saying anything about your desire to be in the United States, because this is important because the student visa is not an immigrant visa. So anything related to living permanently in the US, immigrating to the US, anything around that, I would just stay away from that during that interview. All right, now that we have all the tips settled, let's get to the fun stuff and talk about common questions you'll likely be asked during the interview. So first question you likely get asked will be, why the United States? Why have you decided to study in the US and not your home country? Why do you want to do a master's in the US versus the UK or any other country out there? So why the US? And again, keep your answers short. Give really simple answers. But here you need to have done a lot of research. You need to talk about why the US is really the right place for you. Don't just say everyone goes to the US or the US has good schools. No, that's not how to, reply, or that the US is a big economy. You're already making mistakes. The way I will answer this, or the way I answered it, I think I was asked this question actually. The way I would answer this question is to talk about some of the research I've done. So, I did an MBA. So if I'm asked this question at a visa interview about why the US, I'll say something around, I've done a lot of research about business schools all over the world, and some of the top MBA programs are actually in the US, and so I narrowed down my search and applied to mostly US schools because I really wanted to do a well-recognized program, something like that. So that's how you should answer that question. Talk about the research you've done and why the US became your top choice. So another question you will likely be asked in some way, shape or form. This one is so important, and that question is, what are your plans post-graduation? So this is one that they ask a whole lot. So for this one, let me wear my glasses because you need to see me well, or I need to see you. But the point is, they will likely ask you something about why or what are your plans post-graduation. And for this one, you have to be extra careful. This is where, the mistakes happen, because a lot of us will say things like, I'm hoping at the end of my MBA or at the end of my program or at the end of, once I graduate, I'll get a job in the US. No. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say anything about the US or your plans to remain in the US. Even if you have those plans, that is not very relevant during that interview. Don't say anything that negates your non-immigrant visa that you're applying for, because the student visa is not an immigrant visa. You always have to remember that. And so anything you say about immigration or remaining in the US is already a red flag. So when they ask you your plans post-graduation, they will ask you this question they could ask in different ways. Oh, so where are you planning to work once you graduate? What are you planning to do, towards the end of your program? Something like that. The way to answer this question again is to do your research, of course, but the important thing to note here, I would say the way I will answer this, I will say nothing about location. Now, this is me. If you have any other ideas on how to answer this question, let me know in the comments. But what I would do here is to try not to say anything about location. I'll talk about industry, I'll talk about roles, but I will not say the location because that is not important. Or if you want to say any location, you could say your home country if that is your plan. There's no point lying, but the way I'll answer this question is I'm hoping with this degree, I did an MBA again, but I'm hoping at the end of my MBA program, I get the required skills or knowledge or exposure, whatever the thing is for you. I get the required exposure that I need to switch to this industry. And I'm hoping at the end of my MBA program, I can get a role in a senior role or a director role or a VP role in this tech industry. And I would, that would be my plan post-graduation. So I have said tech industry or tech space or something tech. I have also said that, I want to get a senior role or a VP role or a director role, but I have not said anything about where that role will be. Whether it will be in the UK or in the US or in Nigeria, I haven't said anything about them. And that's how I will answer that question, because even I don't know where I'll get a job. Even I don't know, I can have plans, but I don't really know. So try not to say anything about location when they ask you about your plans. Don't go there and say something like, I'm hoping, the other people that have done this degree in my office or in my, my colleagues that have done a degree similar to this, they were able to secure jobs in the US. Don't say that, okay? Just try not to say anything about location. Or if you must, say something about your home country. If you plan to go back to your home country, then that's fine. Otherwise, I will try not to say anything about the geography or location of where I plan to work. They will also likely ask you a question about like why this school or why this location, especially for some of us that aren't going to like the most popular places like New York City, San Francisco, places like that. If you're just going to any US city, they may ask you something about like, oh, why Chicago or why Seattle, and Chicago is a big city, by the way. Why Dallas, something like that. You should be prepared to answer such a question. Or they will ask you why this school. Again, you need to have done research. So what you should be doing between when you got your admission or when you apply for your visa and your visa interview date is to do a lot of research on how to answer these questions. So if I were answering this question about like why this school, I'll say something about, oh, I've done a lot of research about like the professors that I want to work with or the kind of professors I believe I want to learn from to advance in this field of, maybe if you were doing physics in this field. I have done a lot of research, and a lot of those professors that I would love to work with are in this school, the university of this place, and that's why I decided to apply there, and thankfully I got in. Keep it simple and let them follow up with more questions like, oh, why, and if they are really asking about the location, say something about like, oh, I researched, I found these professors, they are in this school, and I just believe it's worth it to go to that school, and I'll adjust to the weather in Seattle. Or say something you like about Seattle. Maybe say Seattle has, I believe the city is not too different, or the weather is not too different, if that's true, from where I'm coming from. And I just believe it will be easy for me to just adjust to that environment. Something like that. But for you to be able to answer these questions well, you must have done a bit of research, and this research you have to do it, for yourself, because it's very personal. Like if you from some of the things I've said, it's obvious that I'm kind of relating everything to my story or my situation. So you have to do this research for yourself and try to prepare. Now, another major question they will ask you is about funding. How do you plan to fund your education? Well, wait, that is already on my I-20. So why are you asking me that question? But even though they can see that on your I-20, they will still ask you. They will ask you questions about how you will fund your education. And this is where a lot of people get confused, especially people that are taking student loans. What you want to say is, if I were answering this again, this is how I will answer. I'll say something about, about 50% of my tuition and living expenses are already covered with this scholarship or graduate assistantship position that I got, and another 30% will be covered by this student loan, that I applied for and got. I have an approval letter from Prodigy Finance. The balance will mostly be sponsored. I'll mostly be sponsored for the balance by my mother. So what you have said basically is you got 50% scholarship, 30% loan, 20% from your family sponsor. That's all you've said. So don't be afraid to share how you're funding your education. Do not explain too much. Oh, this is the reason why I had to take loans, because this person, my father died, and something happened, and then my family member, and so I had to take loans because save that story. Just go directly and let them ask you follow-up question like, oh, tell me more about this or tell me more about that. So that's how to answer that question. And then another question they are likely to ask you is about your major or your degree. Why are you going for this major, or why is this, your choice, major of your choice? Or why are you going for this degree? Just answer them based off of the research you've done. This is why I think an MBA is the right next step for me. I've worked for 5 years and these are the skills I've learned, but this is an area where I feel like I can improve on, and an MBA will solve that problem for me, or an MBA will give me exposure to that specific area or that specific skill or something like that. So that's kind of how to answer these questions. And the most important thing is, like I said, be confident, do your research, and just answer simply and directly, like nothing more than that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you've gone for some of these student visa interviews and they ask you questions that are different from these, please share in the comments so other people can learn. Thanks for watching this video. If you like to give it a thumbs up, that is the only way you can tell me keep making videos like this. So give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe if you want to get more videos like this. I will see you in my next video. Thank you. So I forgot to mention at the beginning this disclaimer that I am not an agent, or I do not process visas for people, and I am not an expert in all things visa, please. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer there. I'm just sharing this based on my experience and the experience of people that I've worked with, or my friends, my family members as well. So full disclaimer, I am not an expert at this, and I am not an agent. I can't help you with processing visas.